So in this lesson we're going to add ElseIf into our if-else statements. This will allow it to be a bit more complicated and to allow more paths to happen within your program. So I'm just going to start by expanding on the program we did in the last lesson, which was looking at entering in an hour from a 24-hour clock. So in this instance we can see that we've still got our integer input to enter in the hour. We've got our if hour is less than 12 this time, we're going to print good morning. And then we move into an ElseIf statement, which is the new bit. So we shorten ElseIf to ElIf, E-L-I-F, and we still keep our condition statement. So this time we're going to have ElseIf hour is less than 15, print good morning. So if it's less than 12 to start with, it would print good morning and then just jump to the end. If it wasn't less than 12, but it was less than 15, it would print good afternoon. If it was then less than 18, it would print good evening. And then finally, it would print good night. So it'd catch anything else afterwards. So let's run this to test it. So I'm just going to start from the top. So if I do something which is less than 12, so let's do 7, we get good morning as expected. I'm going to run that again because now I want to get something in between 12 and 15. So if I do 14, what we should get is good afternoon because it's greater than 12. That's less than 14. So we do get good afternoon. And we'll test it again the same for good evening. So we want something greater or equal to 15, but less than 18. So let's do 15. And see if we get good evening. And then finally, I just want to check this else statement. So it should be anything which is going to be 18 or above. So let's just do 21. And we get good night. So in this instance, we can see that we start with an if. We can have as many else-ifs in between as we want, but then we end with an else. And this is a good example of how this structure should look. You always start with an if. You should always end with an else for an error message or just to catch anything else. And then you can have as many else-ifs in between as you like. I just want to show another example for how to use if, else-if, and else in a slightly more complicated way. And this example just shows you how to create a very simple calculator. So we've got two variables, number 1 and number 2, with number 1 being assigned a value of 10 and number 2 being assigned a value of 5. Of course you could have this as a user input as well, but just for the example we'll stick with these variables which have set numbers. Our third variable is calculator, and this is where I want a user to input a string, either addition, subtraction, division or multiplication, for what they want to happen to these two numbers. If they choose addition, we'd be looking at if calculator is equal to plus, and then it would actually add number 1 and number 2 and store it into the answer variable. Else if, it would be calculator equal to subtraction, and again it would then have answer equals number 1 subtract number 2, and so on. So in this instance, if I run it, if I actually wanted to multiply the two numbers together, it's asking me here, do you want to add, subtract, divide or multiply? I'm just going to choose to multiply and press enter. It's multiplied 10 by 5 to give me 50. So I've actually used my if, else if and else to actually create a mini calculator program. So it can really be expanded upon quite well. You can make some quite complicated programs. We're still looking at some of the basic areas of this at the moment. But it's really useful to be able to know that you can use this to have a branching path within your program. So if you wanted to do one thing or a different thing each time you run the program, you'd be using a full if, else selection.